Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 City Council meeting of September 9th, 2020. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Parlier.
Here.
Council members Rivera, Gonzalez,
Here.
Weir,
Here.
Smith,
I'm here.
Freeman,
Here.
and Sullivan.
Thank you. On March 4th, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency in California due to the threat of COVID. The governor also passed several executive orders, including the suspension of some components of the Brown Act related to public meetings like this one. And as such, Councilmember Smith is participating by phone, and all council votes tonight will be conducted by roll call. And at this time, Assistant Chief Brent Stratton will offer the invocation. Following the invocation, Councilmember Weir will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Good evening. God, thank you for the opportunity for us to be here tonight. We thank you for the opportunity to live in a country where it's even possible. Pray that you will help us to never forget our call to serve, to do so courageously when needed, but never lacking in compassion, and keeping that close always. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and you may be seated. Here are a few guidelines to help our meeting run smoothly. We request that you turn off your phones. Please be courteous in the use of cameras and videos. And for safety reasons and as a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the council chamber. Applause is allowed during the presentations portion of the meeting, but not during the other portions of the meeting. And please avoid any behavior that disrupts the meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first item?
Public statements.
Thank you. Due to the governor's executive order, which waived the Brown Act provisions requiring physical presence of the public in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, public comments have been encouraged to be made by email and phone call to the city clerk. Those received in such manner have already been provided to the council. If you're here in person to make a public statement, please fill out the public speaker card and give that to the city clerk. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per topic. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk, who will provide copies to the council. And if you're here to speak on a workshop matter, we ask that you speak after staff's presentation on that matter. If you're here to speak on hearing items under the agenda 9 or 10, now isn't the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity when those items are called. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. However, due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, Council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The Council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. Again, please avoid any behavior that disrupts the meeting, including repetitive statements or going over the 3-minute time limit. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers today?
We have received 5 public speaker cards, all on separate subjects.
Thank you. And would you please call the first one?
The first of which is Mr. Curtis Bingham.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Oh, yes. Honorable Mayor and to the Honorable Board. My name is Curtis James Bingham, Sr., servant of our Lord and Savior, God Almighty Jesus Christ. The Lord tells us to honor our leaders. And I like to follow the words of the Lord because I won't come up unless I bring something that the Lord to back up. So I'd just like to say to you, you guys are able to answer things that you never studied. And that's because we get knowledge out of a book, but the Bible tells us wisdoms come from God Almighty himself. So this is why you guys are able to carry yourself like you do with people all the time. Because when they see you, they got questions. They want answers. You guys are able to do that. So I just want to bless you with that. Then I also like to say, the Lord tells us that the poor is despised by their own neighbor, but the rich has many friends. And the destruction of the poor is their poverty. So a lot of them act like they act because they don't have nothing. And the Lord tells us, whosoever gives to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay you. So I know you're looking up some hotel things and rooms like that, and so I just wanted to add that in there. Anything you do for the poor, according to our Lord and Savior, God Almighty Jesus Christ, he will bless you back. And then I'd also like to say, we're having a lot of law enforcement problems all over the world. And it's a shame that it has to be going on this way because it shouldn't be. Romans chapter 13, the Lord told us law enforcement are his ministers, and he backed them up for a reason. If we let evil get out of hand, we're going to have a big problem. And so the Lord also told us, each man shall be rewarded according to his own works. When God called us in, he's going to call us in. No man can retain the spirit. And he said, we all going to be judged according to our own work. So the Lord just want to say to you, because you're going to be dealing with this, as long as you're living, it's going to be some law enforcement negative action taking place because of our world system, And the Lord would just like to say is, if your family member was to die, and then he said, well, this family member made it to heaven, but you're not going to make it to heaven. And then if you say, here's your best friend, since he did bad, he's going to go to hell in a lake of fire, so you're going to have to go there. That would not be fair. So when you see an officer get in trouble, make a mistake, or do something like that, the Lord said, don't blame the whole crew. They here taking care of millions and millions of crimes and murders. They're not the one do the crime. They wake up every morning hoping they don't have to deal with nothing. But when they get out there, they don't know what's going to be there. They don't tell their wives, well, honey, you and the kids can come see us in prison for the next 20 years because we purposely going to go and do something out there, hurt somebody. No, they don't carry themselves in such a fashion. And so the Lord is saying, when you see one do something, if he hasn't really done it, blame him and not the rest. Because, see, you hurt the whole organization because they have careers, they have families, and they're planning on doing things. They don't want to say, every time we got to go to work, we got to worry about somebody in the group doing something. If they do, we all got to suffer. Talking about defunding the law enforcement, that's just a shame. See, when they need all the money they can get. So the Lord said, remember, judge the one that done the wrong and not the rest. We got to keep lifting them up because they lift us up. And also the Lord would just like to say, you guys are favored by the people just like our law enforcement is favored by the people. And that's why they voted in the 1% measure. And you ought to be real happy that the people favor you. And also that they favor our local law enforcement too, along with the fire department as well. And that could add up to an extra $1 billion in 10 years that you guys can do a lot with because of that 1% factor. So let's thank the Lord, let's thank law enforcement, and thank yourself that the people see fit to be a blessing to you. Thank you, Honorable Mayor.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Troy Hightower.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, city manager, and staff. My name is Troy Hightower. I'm a local consultant here, and I would like to commend the city's recent public statements on the economic and environmental benefits of high-speed rail. We have watched the TV interviews that featured Assistant City Manager Jackie Kitchen, and we agree with her that high-speed rail will bring tremendous economic benefits to Bakersfield and the region. Because of the economic development opportunities, We highly recommend that the new Economic Development Department support and work with the high-speed rail project. And in closing, I wanted to refer to a study that was made by UCLA. They call it the second tier study. And the study illustrated how smaller cities that were connected because of high-speed rail to larger cities effectively become part of that larger economic region. And they stated Bakersfield in that study as an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Next speaker, please.
We have Keith Wesley.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Keith Wesley Nettleton III. And I may be off in left field. Last week I was, but this week I have 7 diagnoses as a schizophrenic. I'm termed that way. Actually, I have a disease called insomnia, and I read up about it, and it says there's a cure to that. So I want to tell you my 7 diagnoses that I've had. One is chronic and differentiated type. That was my first. Then you have schizophrenia. You have chronic schizophrenia. Then there's a personality disorder and schizoaffective, schizophrenic disorder, chronic, and you have bipolar. And my final one is called impressionism. I couldn't really find a good definition on that, but there's a circle, and you cut it in thirds. A third never recover, and I have heart for them, and I feel for them. There's a third to get better, and a third that, it goes away, but it's a bad stigma. And I'd like to see a test, or something done about the problem of these three people, or 3 pieces of pie. Test, improvement, and diagnosis. And so I got the impressionism, so I think I'm through with that. And one thing I want to tell you, my father died about 2 or 3 years ago, and I will not accept his closure. I won't accept closure with him. My father died. I won't accept closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Next speaker, please.
We have Jacqueline Coyle.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Jacqueline Coyle. Because personal information, like our home addresses, can easily be obtained by anyone seeking to do us or our families harm. Unfortunately for my family,
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and replay that.
to live in fear for our lives because personal information like our
Well, I'm trying to play Judge Esther Salas, and on the 19th of 2020, her son was shot and killed, along with her husband, who was shot 3 times. The perpetrator found her and her address online with full dossier. And the city was contacted on July 18th about addresses being released online that the city attorney, Mrs. Jenny Gennaro, has stated is public record. Mayor Go, your address is listed online. There has been another judge in town whose name I will not mention, has been listed online. The city's inaction is perpetuating this cycle of violence. And it's disturbing that backyard hens have been fast-tracked from July's council meeting to now being a draft proposal legislation hearing next meeting while there has been zero action on the notification of domestic violence survivors, are judges, and I hope that you were actually contacted about your address being released in that dump. But the city attorney's statements via the Bakersfield Californian is reprehensible, and I cannot believe she's still sitting here today without anything being done on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coyle. Next speaker, please.
We have Adam.
Thank you.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Adam. This is what happens when people's addresses who are victims get posted on the internet. People coming to people's homes who are violent criminals, threatening them, and yet the city refuses to take action and simply calls this fanfare. You can read the Bakersfield Californian article. Nobody has been notified. In fact, you have to submit public records requests to even know if you've been impacted. And there are numerous people that have been impacted in a variety of ways. Some of the names in town of people who had their information posted: John Sinclair, Ada Twisselman, Nancy Turnipseed, Frankie James, Lydia Barger, Michaela Marie Olberg, and there's 10,000 names, and yet no one has been notified. Esther Luckins, Jose Salamanca, Gregory Bynum, Jose Luis Torres, Gerardo Campos Amador, Elmer Jerry Lund and Marilyn Lund, the Jamara family, Barbara Walker, Lydia Barger, James Brian Beatty, the Houchin family, David Hanley, Ruben and Dolores Herrera, Jim Landers and Karen Landers, Farish Hartwell, James Lopez, Angela Martinez, David Hanley, Nick Bloomer, Vance Long, Richard Jose Abdallah, Natalie Youssef, the Lee family, Juan Hernandez, Tony Renee O'Brien, David and Deborah Bluen, Roberta Cruz Arias, and many, many more. How many more before we notify those that have been impacted? Why isn't the city providing some sort of protection, notification, title insurance for those that have, the people have written in saying that they have had their titles to their homes almost stolen because of this? Meanwhile, the staff that signed a data agreement saying that they wouldn't post it online have had no action taken. So this is really, truly just unbelievable. When is the city going to take action? How many more? I mean, as I think the previous speaker noted, there was a judge's spouse in town that wrote to you guys a day before the tragic incident in New Jersey. When are you going to take action? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. And that concludes our public speakers. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Mayor?
There is one more. Okay, do I?
Yeah, it was for the hearing item.
It's for the hearing item, which you'll be able to speak on later? Oh, it's for something else.
We have Kevin Oliver.
Sorry, Mr. Oliver, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Honorable council members, Madam Mayor as well. My name is Kevin, well, a lot of you know me. My name is Kevin Oliver. I'm a local business person, real estate broker here in town. And I know that, that you guys have been tasked to hire 100 new BPD. And I'm very, very happy about that, and we're about 30 in. And I know a couple of the council members, as well as a number of other folks, have contacted me. One of our challenges that we have here, what I should say you guys have here, is housing right now for our wonderful BPD people. And I gave some recommendations, as well as after I hung up the phone with one of our other council members here, I started making some phone calls to some of our local business people. And I says, you know what, back during the war, we helped business people as well as our community helped house soldiers. Why can't we do that for some of our fine BPD people that are in the academy as volunteers, our people in business? We can house them, we can help them in temporary housing and stuff until they're able to get permanent housing, and see what we can do to help out in that. And that's kind of the thing that I'd like to propose to you guys, us in the community being able to help you guys as well, and moving forward with that. And with that, I thank you guys so much. Hopefully we can look into that a little bit deeper.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Vice Mayor?
Thanks, Kevin. I think that's a great idea. You did bring up the war where, I think it was in England, where soldiers were housed in local families' homes. And in talking to staff, fairly recent, in HR, that especially trainees that we bring into our community, housing's never been a problem in Bakersfield. But with the tightening or extremely tight housing and rental market, that is becoming an issue. So if staff can reach out to Mr. Oliver, and I know he's well connected within the real estate industry and other people that might be, willing to do an in-home kind of thing. I think that'd be great, and help our new officers get connected to the community also. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Freeman.
Kevin, how long are this is for people enrolled in the academy. How long a period do they need housing for? Is it a 6-month course or a 3 or what?
I'm going to speak off the cuff, but I believe the academy is about 6 months on the staff.
Yeah, it's about a 6-month academy from what I understand. I mean, we'd have to reach out to the chief and find out. And I understand that the city has a small budget to be able to pay for hotels and things like that, but it's only for a few weeks. It's not for the entire period. So I'm not 100% sure whether the new recruits or anything have to pay, it comes out of their own pocket or where that comes from. But I think as a community, we do need more police officers. We need help within our community, and I want the community to reach out and get more in touch with them as well. And I think in the times that we're having right now, in the divided times that we have, that may help as well. Let's connect our officers with our community.
How have, Chief here tonight, how have they traditionally found housing during the 6 months?
Lieutenant Stratton, are you in the lobby? There's a question for you.
Anyone who can answer, what have they typically done for the 6 months? If this, I guess you're saying a lot of them are from out of town and don't live here yet.
Correct.
So I'm just wondering what has,
Lieutenant.
have we housed them in the past?
Sorry, Assistant Chief.
Chief, sorry.
Councilmember Freeman had a question.
I'm sorry, sir, I missed the question. I was in the line.
Where have cadets in the past who don't live in Bakersfield, but the academy, where have they found housing?
Well, we're
historically?
a unique dynamic within the state of California, sir, that almost 100% of our employees and police officers are from the Bakersfield area. That's very uncommon and plays very well for us for a community-oriented policing style of philosophy that we have. So it's very rare that we end up with a trainee that comes in from out of town. Almost all of our people are either homegrown or they're transplanted and have lived here for quite some time. So it's not something that we have come up a lot, but it is definitely something that we could be aware of. And if there's an additional resource, if we do get people that are coming in there, that maybe we could take advantage of.
What is causing the problem now versus, apparently we didn't have the problem in the past because they're from Bakersfield. What's causing the problem now?
Well, I think...
So, Councilmember Freeman, I know that Vice Mayor asked staff to follow up on this.
Yeah, we'll just do it offline, and we'll figure it out that way.
Okay, I'm just curious where this problem is coming from.
City Manager.
I think it's, Honorable Mayor and Council, I think it's a good idea to follow up with this offline, and genuinely I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I think the dynamics are shifting for a couple of reasons, so let me just offer a couple thoughts and we can do more follow-up offline. As we pursue a really bold recruitment effort to hire 100 officers, over a 3-year period, that's going to mean a lot more recruiting than we've done in the past, and so our numbers are going to have to be higher. And we have been fortunate in Bakersfield to have most of our officers come from this community. As we're really pushing hard to get higher numbers, I think we're going to start seeing more and more individuals that come into our academy from outside of the area. And Vice Mayor is correct that in some recent analysis that we've done of where we've lost people in the academy, 2 key factors have come up. One has been their physical training, and that's a separate issue to address a different way. But another has been in the housing area. As the market is tightening up here in Bakersfield, the rental market has become very tight, and so rentals are harder to come by. But also, to what Mr. Oliver pointed out, some of these recruits that may be coming from outside of the area, having, even if it's a roommate that might be in the academy with them, or if it's making a connection to somebody here in the community, helping them to feel connected and to have support while they're in the academy, which is a pretty grueling and challenging environment. As we did this analysis, we really looked at it and said we need to do something about housing, so it's very timely and it aligns with some opportunities to help more recruits stay in the academy.
Thank you. Thank you, and we will continue this offline with staff. Thank you for your comments.
And Mayor and Council, if I may, just really briefly make a couple of other clarifying comments. We've received a number of public comments through the blue memo that you've received electronically, as well as some other comments this evening about city records and addresses and information. And just want to provide a couple clarifying facts related to that. There have been some questions about the city's access to a county online record system. Today, the city has access to that county system. It was removed for a short time. That was based on a misunderstanding about how the city uses the information in that system, as well as some information that was city public records that we had put in an online archive early this year. But I wanted to clarify for the City Council that we have resolved that misunderstanding with the county. We have full access to the county's iRecord system, and we've reviewed with them how we use that information and that we don't share it with the public directly from the county system, and the safeguards that we have to keep information safe. As I stated, we did have records that were related to property deeds based on easements that were processed as public records through city transactions that were placed in an online archive that was searchable. But at no time did the city proactively post lists of information within specific categories. These are just public documents. In fact, these are public documents that are available through the county registrar if you go to the Hall of Records. But in an abundance of caution, based on concerns that were raised by community members in March of this year, all of those public records were removed from the searchable database in March. No information has been available on the city's archive since that time. It's not an issue that has been perpetuating. That information has been removed. And we take very seriously the safety of our community members. Despite the fact that they're public records, we did take them out of our archive that was searchable. So those are just some of the clarifying pieces of information around that. And we've worked closely with the county to ensure that the way that we're using their record database is consistent with what they had intended, and that issue has been addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under workshops, item A, League of California Cities Annual Conference, appointment of voting delegates and city position on conference resolutions, and staff referral for city legislative platform.
Thank you. Mr. Clegg.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. We do have a brief slide show to walk through. In most ways, this is a fairly routine action, but there's a couple of small nuances to it, but we'll move through it pretty quickly. One of those nuances is that in this coming conference for the League of Cities is that it will be a virtual conference, and that's a little bit of a change. But essentially what this item is about is appointing a voting delegate and an alternate to represent the city on resolutions before the League of Cities. To recognize, the staff's recommended position on this one, and also to reflect the staff requested referral to develop a city legislative platform through the Legislative and Litigation Committee. Excuse me. Just to highlight again, the conference has been virtual, so the attendance of council members is somewhat in flux as council members are reassessing whether they want to participate virtually. We had some council members that had planned to attend in person early on in planning. Mayor Go is scheduled to attend the conference, but we're pending confirmation from other council members whether they participate in person or not. There typically, as you know, there are a number of resolutions that come up each year, and the city typically picks a voting delegate for that. And so this action before you tonight is to identify someone to represent the city on that action. What's interesting, I think with the COVID year, there has only one resolution before the League of Cities this year, probably because many of our member cities are focused on bigger issues. But there is one topic, and it's in your administrative report. The city of Cerritos asked for a very specific advocacy action related to a federal law, and the city staff recommends on this one that we have a neutral position, in as much as that this action is pretty targeted and specific, and there are questions to be answered about it before trying to advocate at a statewide level for this action, and so that's our recommendation there. And as I stated earlier, we would like to begin developing in earnest a legislative platform, which would be a document that comes back to the full city council for adoption that would state legislative positions on topics relevant to local control and to city issues, so that as legislation comes up in any given legislative session each year, city staff has the direction from council and authorization to take positions on those bills, and allows us to move fast and be nimble and not wait for the next council meeting to bring forward distinct resolutions on each of those items. And it will be the marching orders for staff and for our legislative advocates or lobbyists to push for the outcomes that we want through legislative advocacy. And so we'd like to bring that back to committee for a first cut to discuss with council members, and then bring it back to the full council after that. So with that, the key action for you tonight is to nominate and appoint someone to be the designee to vote on behalf of the city at the League of Cities Conference.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Vice Mayor.
Motion that the mayor represents the city of Bakersfield as the delegate.
And we need an alternate also. And Madam City Attorney, can we do the motions together?
You can.
Okay. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to amend the motion to include Vice Mayor Parlier as the alternate.
You have a motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier,
Aye.
Council Members Rivera,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Weir,
Aye.
Smith,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes?
and Sullivan.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And Madam Clerk, next item, please.
I would like to add, there was a staff memorandum that was filed and distributed for workshop items A. Next item, under workshops, B, quarterly update for the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative on homeless system performance metrics.
Thank you. Mr. Clegg, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council. We have with us Ms. Anna Lavin and Ms. Deb Johnson from the Collaborative to provide us this update as requested by Council.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for having us, and we're really excited to talk with you a little bit about our system performance measures, and we'll go from there. As you all know, my name is Anna Lavin. I'm the Executive Director for the Bakersfield-Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative, and we have Deb Johnson, President and CAO of the California Veterans Assistance Foundation, and she wears multiple hats because she's also our governing board chair as well. So let me go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about BKRHC's vision of success. Our real goal for our organization is that every person in Kern County has a permanent place to call home. So what does that mean? It means that those experiencing homelessness should experience homelessness in brief form. It should be rare, and we don't want it to happen more than once, if at all. People experiencing homelessness should achieve permanent housing quickly, so we don't want them to linger. And we also acknowledge that supportive services, outreach, engagement help people and folks maintain those permanent housing options so that they're successful and they continue to remain in their homes. And finally, our vision really looks at the idea of what it means to be at risk of experiencing homelessness and looking at prevention as the best way of making sure that we ensure that folks remain in their homes and have a place to call home.
Good evening. So one of the questions you should be asking us is, what is system performance measure? In the homeless world, in our collaborative, we have a whole set of vocabulary that's different. So we're here to explain what it means to us, and hopefully that will help you understand the work that our homeless collaborative does. So system performance measures helps community gauge their progress in preventing and ending homelessness. It provides a complete picture of how the community is reaching its goal. And in our own community, the Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services is what's called our Homeless Management Information Lead. So their job is to help our community track homeless data. And so the information that we're going to be providing to you today with our system performance measure is in that homeless management information system. So why is that really important? Well, every year, our collaborative has to send reports to HUD. And in that, HUD then creates what's called the Annual Homeless Assessment Report, which goes to Congress. So information from our local system goes to HUD, which then goes to Congress, and that's really what drives some of the methodologies, the projects, and the programs that we focus on. So our slide is a future where everyone has a permanent place to call home, a journey roadmap. And so it looks pretty simple, but there's complexities in this roadmap. The first one is, how does a homeless person access services? It is through our coordinated entry system. Anna will be talking about that a little bit further. And what's most important is, because our community is so vast, it's large, it's geographically difficult to have one access, we have multiple access points for homelessness. The most important and the critical one that we really navigate towards is the 211 system that is operated through Community Action Partnership of Kern. What we're not able to get information on is other entry points, such as law enforcement and hospitals, because they do not use the homeless management information system. So the key to the work that we do is wraparound services. So we have a person that's at risk of experiencing homelessness, they access coordinated entry, and then the first thing that we want to do is we want to try to do prevention. So we don't want that person to become homeless at all. We try to reach out and do prevention. Prevention looks at diversion techniques. It is about, do you have somebody that you can stay with? Is there a way that we can help you prevent from becoming homeless? We don't want you to go into even the shelter system. So, but to do that, you have to have wraparound services. The second piece in prevention is financial assistance. Some people can stay stably housed if they just get maybe 1 month's assistance in their rent. Then they're going to be safe. They can figure the rest out. The third piece is agencies and case managers or housing navigators working with landlords. Hey, is there a way that we can work with you to prevent eviction? Because eviction is very expensive. So our goal on the prevention piece is really to try to prevent them from becoming homeless to begin with. But our community, it's limited here. We have 2 agencies at this point in time that's reflective in this presentation that provides those prevention resources. The California Veterans Assistance Foundation provides prevention resources, but we do veterans only. And the Bakersfield Homeless Center also does prevention resources. But what's interesting about prevention, it's not included in Homeless Management Information System data because they're not homeless. So if we're successful with prevention, that's fantastic. They don't hit the HMIS system. But if we're not successful in that, they go into experiencing homelessness. So in our experiencing homelessness piece, you know, we have like a good diagram on there. We have multiple outreach, engagement, and support services. So the first one we have is emergency shelters. Everybody knows the mission at Kern County, amazing resource. And the Bakersfield Homeless Center are our local emergency shelters. The second piece, navigation centers. And I know that you are all very well aware of navigation centers. So obviously the M Street Navigation Center that has just stood up and has been critical to our community this spring, especially during COVID. And then we are all looking forward to the Brundage Lane Navigation Center as it's completed and it focuses on our population. The third piece in there is rapid rehousing. There's 2 organizations that provide rapid rehousing services in our community. California Veterans Assistance Foundation, which is veteran only, and Bakersfield Homeless Center, which receives limited funding. And then we go down into transitional housing. 2 organizations provide transitional housing. California Veterans Assistance Foundation, which is veteran only, and the Alliance, which is domestic violence only. So even though we have a very comprehensive roadmap by itself in our community, we have limited ways to be able to move that person that's experiencing homelessness through those outreach, engagement, and support services, and then link them into permanent housing. So we get to permanent housing. We have market rate housing, which we know right now 56% of Californians are rent burdened, meaning they are spending between 30 and 50% of their income on rent alone, and that's contributing to a lot of our housing crises. And then at the end of all of this work, between the permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, we also want to focus on recidivism. And again, I'm going to let Anna will have some more data on that as we go through our presentation. Actually, I have the, okay, so the next one, sorry. So here's our Kern County Homeless Snapshot. It was hard to know exactly what data you guys would like to have, and we welcome your input as we do our quarterly presentations so we can completely understand what kind of information and data we can get for you. And this was based off from the first time Anna and I presented, and I think Councilmember Weir, you were on the phone at that time and you had asked us for some information. So we have an idea of our age range. Something that seemed very disturbing to us was the category 0 to 17. 21% of our individuals in our homeless management information system are 0 to 17 years old. That's a very staggering number for our community. As we look through the graph, 18 to 24-year-olds are considered 9%, which we consider our homeless youth. 25 to 44 is 39%, 45 to 61 is 26%, and 5% of our homeless population is over the age of 62. Our gender, it's pretty well split between female and male, but we still have more females that are homeless compared to male. We look at race and ethnicity. Some things that we found were very interesting in looking at this data is how many people considered themselves with multiple races. But we can see that Black or African Americans make up 25.13% of our homeless population, and white is 66.77% of our homeless population. We wanted to break down for you a couple subpopulations in this category. So one of the initiatives our Homeless Collaborative is involved in is the Community Solutions Built for Zero initiative. And so they really want us to focus on 3 specific populations. The first one is veteran. We can see what that information looks like, what our new inflow, the number housed, and we have what's called a veteran by name list. So every homeless veteran that has entered our system of care is identified on a list by name, and we track them. We're required, and we do that. So at this point in time, 18 veterans became homeless during July of 2020. 7 of them were housed, and right now we have identified 77 homeless veterans in Kern County. Our youth data, 15 new youth were identified as homeless, 6 were housed, and 87 youth, and that's that 18 to 24 year range, are identified as homeless in our community. One of the focus areas of our collaborative has been on chronically homeless, which at some point in time, that definition is complicated. We would like to come back at our next presentation and really talk about what that means. But 2 people entered chronicity in the month of July. 1 of those have been housed, so 4 individuals are on our chronic by name list. Because of the pandemic, we were forced in our community to take a look at those on the COVID list. So we wanted to focus on those that were aged 65 and older, have chronic medical conditions that were identified in our homeless management system. At this moment, 209 individuals that are 65 and older with chronic medical conditions are unsheltered in our community. 22 of them are in shelters. A lot of people even talk about the TIU, which is the temporary isolation units, which those are those trailers at the fairgrounds. Thank you, Anna. So our inflow for the month of July, 25 individuals came into the temporary isolation units, and 24 of those clients were housed. So that shows that if we shelter correctly, we can manage our homeless population. And it's interesting with our data that COVID population we're talking about is our 2nd largest subpopulation. So the next slide we have is HIV/AIDS. And what we find interesting, thank you, what we find interesting with this is how many people choose not to answer this question. So, but we have Clinica Sierra Vista, who does an amazing job with this population in our community that steps up and makes sure that we provide adequate services. On the substance abuse side, we had 1,504 people say no, 100 identified as having alcohol abuse, 363 with drug abuse, 171 with both alcohol and drug abuse, and 1,478 people did not answer that question for our system data. And that is like a quick snapshot of some of our subpopulations and how complex and detailed the data that we collect is.
So we wanted to show you a little bit about the coordinated entry system. As Deb described a little earlier, coordinated entry is really that pipeline approach. How do folks navigate through? And their entry point is by calling 211 and going through an intake process. What you can see with this particular graph is probably something that all of you may have been hearing or seeing. or have been concerned about, particularly under COVID conditions. And that is really that you can see from the point at which coordinated entry began, which was in the January of 2019, our call volume has increased substantially, right? And you can see that at the point of COVID, when shelter in place started, we'd kind of gone to a little dip in February. You'll look at those green bars. And then by the time we hit August, which is our most recent month for data collection, you can see that we have a substantial jump. And these are all calls from people who are either worried about becoming homeless or are homeless and needing support and some type of assistance. So I think that we can probably draw the conclusion that obviously our resources, as Deb has described, have become somewhat strained, and we can anticipate that that experience will continue. The other piece I would like to mention is that the city and the county have really undertaken quite a bit of leadership, I think, recently with some major decisions around prevention dollars, for which we're very grateful. And also in thinking about how do we really navigate and help support these folks, because we know that the need is out there. And you know, I'm always about data-informed decision-making, and here I hope that you feel somewhat validated in some of the decisions you have made or are going to be considering here in the next few weeks or months around the impacts of COVID when we think about both prevention as well as how to address our ongoing homeless challenge. So it was really interesting for us to go through the process of trying to think about what data do we want to share with you. We have HMIS, which houses a lot of information actually. And typically the process that we engage in is really to look a little bit more at the programmatic or activity level. And so in thinking about what did we want to start to talk about at that sort of 60,000 or 100,000 foot view, this is kind of where we landed. And we selected these 4 points of measurement because they're commonly assessed. They provide a pretty good general picture of what's going on when we think about people experiencing homelessness. They're obviously in HMIS, which is fantastic. And also this data is reported to HUD. And so there's a validation process that also goes through. So what are these 4 points? They're pretty basic. First is inflow. What is the number of individuals entering homelessness for the first time? So how many new entry points or new folks do we have entering homelessness? The second is the outflow. How many people do we have exiting homelessness? How many are going into permanent housing destinations? How long did it take us to get them there and be successful in that process? So the length of time. And finally, recidivism. How successful were we in terms of at the 2-year mark, once they were in their permanent housing solution, were they able to stay there? So we have some really interesting graphs here, and we've also split those out for those of you who do have the presentation packet. If the numbers are too small, you kind of want to dive in a little bit more closely. So let's talk a little bit about inflow. How many folks do we have? And we looked at a yearly rate. At some point, we'd like to do it on a monthly, but this is a yearly perspective. What you can see here is that for the inflow, and that would be the blue color on the left-hand graph there, where it says inflow versus outflow. What's been interesting is that you can see that there's been a somewhat steady increase. And then by the time you hit 2019, we actually started to decrease a little bit. For outflow, how many folks did we get off the streets? Then we hit, you could see that we started to be really successful in 2017 with our outflow. And then things started to get a little bit more difficult. One of the things that I want to really mention here and highlight is that these decrease that we see in outflow, in other words, those who became housed from 2017 through 2019, mirrors reductions in funding from HUD. And so I think the real story here, what you don't see, what isn't necessarily told directly on this graph, but what I can share with you, is that when you have loss of beds, when you have multiple projects that are being lost, it means that it's even more critical that we have those investments from the city and the county, because anytime we have a reduction in resources, you will see an impact. And then finally, let's look at length of time. You can see a real spike there in 2018, and I would like to say that as we started to see that increase, one of the things that is just phenomenal about the collaborative and all of the providers is how quickly they get into action. So you can see that they immediately started to take movement on that, and by 2019 you saw a decrease. One of the other things that I think is really important to understand is that as we house folks, who gets housed first? It's those who are easiest to house. And so what you end up with is this backlog pool of folks who are increasingly more and more difficult to house. It's not uncommon for folks to have a number of red flags, right? No credit, poor credit, one eviction, more than one eviction. And these are the kinds of things that folks like our housing navigators and the staff, landlord incentives, those are the kinds of things that we put forward to try to help get around some of those challenges. But I suspect that because there was strong success in 2017 with outflow, that's why the following year you saw an increase in length of time homeless, because the people who were then left in the pool of homelessness are those who are most difficult to house. And then finally, recidivism. This is a really strong number, and we're continuing to see success here. Recidivism is where essentially folks return to homelessness. And you can see that that has continued to decrease, generally speaking. And those numbers are really strong, 17%. You probably don't see that in a general landlord situation in terms of type of turnover. And what I should share with you is that we have particular kinds of programs that are even more successful. So our most successful program is permanent supportive housing, where their recidivism rate is 5%. Why? Because that's where we have the best of both worlds. We have someone who is housed and gaining stability, and they have wraparound services, and they have ongoing support. And that's really the key to success when it comes to housing folks. So, what are we hoping that you'll take away from this? First, hopefully you found it interesting. I know it's very data heavy, but that was the purpose of this presentation. You know, there's a couple of takeaways. One is that increases in length of time homeless are largely due to inadequate supply of permanent housing resources. So it was really interesting to me to hear that even for when it comes to BPD, there are concerns about housing, right? Just in general. And so when we start to think about sort of the sweet spot for folks who are generally considered low income or on a fixed income and where we can house them, those options are relatively limited. However, what I will say is that our housing navigators and locators work very, very hard, and they're probably some of the most persuasive folks that we have in our community when it comes to trying to get folks housed. So we know that there's a shortfall. This isn't a surprise, but it's something that I think we certainly want to continue to partner with you on. How can we work towards affordable housing solutions? And then in addition to that, one of the other pieces that we really want to talk about is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think that as we start to think about prevention under COVID circumstances, that will become increasingly more important as a philosophy. Deb, you want to talk about next steps?
Yep. So one of the other interesting things about our homeless management information system, in a lot of communities, the agencies that put data into their system are only those that are HUD funded or kind of required by a funding source. Our community has over 28 agencies that input data into our homeless management information system. So what we need to make sure that we do on our end is that planning and action. We look at system evaluation, and that's how we plan what our next steps are. What are our next programs? What are our projects? What are our gaps? What are our needs? We need to expand and reinforce community partners and service providers' use of HMIS and improve data quality. What is nice about this work is the qualitative. It explains the why. So when we get to see a number, and let's say we're looking at 17% recidivism, we have data to back it up, to analyze, to look at, and see what our next step is going to be. One of the critical committees in the Homeless Collaborative is called Planning and Performance. Their job is to analyze this data and give recommendations for housing modalities or new initiatives for us to take a look at and see how we can implement that into our community. And with that, do you have any questions of us?
Thank you, Ms. Levin. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. I do have a question. We met some time ago at Adventist Health to talk about the data and some of the challenges and the gaps in input with the HMIS, and I'm curious where that stands. We talked about expansion of that. There were some questions about insufficient licenses, but I think we felt confident that we would be able to get those. Where does that stand today? It's been months now.
Sure. So we have a few potential funding sources and other future funding sources that we're advocating for expansion of HMIS so that we can support behavioral health. And I know Bill Walker is here and want to thank him for lending out their staff. What we're finding is that as we want to become more complex in our data analysis, that means we need the experts, right? We need folks who are going to be able to do that. So our regular HAP, that's Homeless Housing Assistance Program funding, which is from the state, has some dollars attached to it in terms of supporting HMIS and those licenses. We also have built in a little bit of funding under just the general BKRHC operating budget. We've also have a new staff member on our staff who's an administrative analyst, and he has just done a phenomenal job. He's the one who, Rick Ramos, I don't know if he's here. Rick? Yes. So we want to thank Rick for all of that genius work, as he's really done a deep dive into HMIS world and worked very closely with our partners at Behavioral Health. And then we have been talking a little bit more about a consolidated investment funding tool with city staff and county staff and trying to see where we might be able to carve out some additional dollars, either from ESG COVID money to support. Because at this point, it's not just about licenses, it's about actual IT folks. They have one person, and Bill can hopefully correct me if I'm misspeaking, but they essentially have one person, and we're at the point where we really need like 2 data folks to be able to maintain all of this information. So some of it's in the works, and some of it is something certainly we will continue to advocate for.
Thank you, Ms. Levin. And Mr. Clegg, if you can shed some light on that too, please.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and City Council, the ESG funding that was made available through the federal government for COVID-specific response. We had one allocation that we brought to your council a couple months ago. We received a second allocation, and staff is working on recommendations for how to disperse those funds in collaboration with the collaborative and the county. And we will be bringing that forward to council, and you can expect to see in that portions for HMIS, because we do believe that there's a sort of a public good to that it does benefit everyone overall, and we think it's a good use of the city's portions of ESG funding to help support HMIS.
Thank you very much. That clearly was a gap that a wide variety of people identified, so very supportive of that. You had spoken about the outflow, and on August 24th, I reached out to Mr. Pells about the number of people waiting for housing, and Mr. Pells identified 595 homeless persons on that date waiting to be matched. And of those, 153 had documents ready with the support of case managers. Community, Bakersfield community, Kern County, we need your support. There are people ready to be matched. This would take them out of homelessness, but they have no place to go. So for those of you who have apartments. That's something to consider. And there are provisions that are made to help, is that $2,500 help still there? Yes. So reach out to Mr. Pels and let's get some of our homeless people housed, those of you who have space available. But this is something where we really need the help of the community. People ready to go into housing. We need your help, community. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we go to the slide that depicted the various different measurements of the collaborative?
Are you talking about this
Yeah,
one?
that's correct.
Yep. Yeah.
I really appreciate this slide, and part of the reason why I made this referral for a quarterly report is so that we can analyze this particular data on a quarterly basis. You know, as the City Council has made an effort to invest in homelessness in various different ways significantly, I think it's really important that we understand the data and how we're performing over time. You know, I know a lot of folks hype up the point-in-time count, and we're often referring to that as only a snapshot. But I think it is important for us to establish some measurements that we can all agree upon as being those measurements that we can compare quarter after quarter and really determine where, in fact, we need to invest additional dollars or analyze our performance even. And so I'd appreciate that component become a part of each presentation on a quarterly basis. And staff, if you would make sure, if you ensure that that be part of it, not necessarily part of the public presentation, but definitely part of a staff report, I'd appreciate that, so we can get a better sense of how we're trending over time. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Are there any other requests related to this item? I don't see. Councilmember Smith, just want to check in with you.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, very good. I don't see any other requests to speak. And I do have a request. If we did, can we get copies of the slides that you presented today? So just make sure that council has those. Maybe we already have them in our
Motion to
packets.
receive and file, Mayor.
Motion. We have a motion. And would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Parlier,
Aye.
Council Members Rivera,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Weir,
Aye.
Smith,
Yes.
Freeman,
Aye.
and Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Levin. Next item, please.
Consent calendar, items 8A through 8BA for approval.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Does any council member wish to recuse themselves from an item? Does any council member wish to remove a consent item for separate consideration?
I'd like to make a comment on item S, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent calendar items 8A through 8BA with the exception of item S as in Sam, along with the noted agenda corrections by the city clerk.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we have a motion. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier,
Aye.
Council Members Rivera,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Weir,
Aye.
Smith,
Yes.
Freeman,
Aye.
and Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Councilmember Weir on item S.
Okay, thank you. I really don't have a comment that's specific to this particular item, but as I was reading the contract, I know they're coming back and they're going to do reports to us, but I didn't see anything in there other than they are solely spending this money for a specific purpose, but I didn't see anything in the contract of how they would account to us for the money that we've given them, and so we know that it's been spent appropriately. And I thought we talked about that maybe a few months ago or so, that we're going to start including that kind of verbiage in our contracts when we're giving money to another organization to. So any comments on that?
Thank you, Councilmember Ware and Mayor and Council. It's a good reminder for us. We did include in the contract language language about reporting, but we could have been more specific in those details. And Mr. Ortiz is here tonight. They've been very open with us and in the commitment to give a good accounting for this. So I'm certain that they're amenable to that, but we'll ensure that we create some metrics in there that we can ask for them to include.
Yeah, I don't know that it needs to come to the council in full, but it needs to come to staff. So we have a good understanding of how that money was spent. And having said that, I move approval of item S.
We have a motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier.
Aye.
Council members Rivera,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Weir,
Aye.
Smith,
Yes.
Freeman,
Aye.
and Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Our next item is public hearings. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers per side. So it's important that you identify yourself quickly and make your statements succinctly so others may speak. We'll hear statements first from those opposed to the staff recommendation. Then we'll hear from those who would like to speak in favor of staff's recommendation. If there is testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the TV screens behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone, identify yourself. After 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on, and at the end of 15, a red light will flash indicating your time is up, and quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be addressed until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk. She'll give copies to the council. Please be courteous of others who wish to speak. Unless there's approval by the majority of the City Council, there's a strict 15-minute time limit per side. So please be concise and avoid repeating the remarks of previous speakers. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first public hearing item?
Hearing item A, public hearing to consider a resolution ordering the vacation of a portion of the T alley between H Street and I Street behind 1629 California Avenue. Additionally, a staff memorandum has been filed and distributed to council regarding this item.
Thank you. Mr. Clegg or Mr. Fidler?
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, the applicant is proposing to construct a gas station on the southeast corner of California and H Street. The applicant desires to close the west leg of a T intersection within an alley to facilitate the construction of this gas station. Staff has reviewed this request and finds it appropriate, and staff recommends adoption of the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? If so, let me just see your hands. Seeing none, I'll ask, is there anyone who wishes to speak in support or favor of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, I'll return it to council for comment, and this is in Councilmember Gonzalez's ward. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt the resolution.
You have a motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Oh, I need to close before we do this. So at this time, I will close the public hearing, and we have already returned it to council for comment and action. Councilmember Gonzalez, since I messed up, would you just like to say that again, please?
Again, I'd like to move to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Parlier.
Aye.
Council members Rivera,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Weir,
Aye.
Smith,
Yes.
Freeman,
Aye.
and Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under B, public hearing to consider resolution setting domestic water availability fee for service areas of the City of Bakersfield domestic water system.
Mr. Chinella.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and members of the council. The objective of this public hearing is for the City Council to consider a resolution setting the domestic water availability fee for the City of Bakersfield's domestic water system, which is basically from Stein Road to the west up to Snow Road on the north and, say, Taft Highway, or just a little bit south of Taft Highway on the south. The basis for the water availability fee adjustment is defined in the Bakersfield Municipal Code, Section 15, and it's based on a construction cost index, and it's to be reviewed annually and brought to City Council for consideration. The current water availability fee is $6,169 per gross acre. The proposal is to increase it by 1.98%, or $6,291 per gross acre. If we assume approximately 4 dwellings per acre, that's a one-time fee of about $30.60 per dwelling unit. The California Government Code, Section 66016, requires that increases in existing fees and changes be adopted by ordinance or resolution following a public hearing. So that, again, this is the one-time fee where growth pays for growth, and it gives revenue to the Water Resources Department for us to build new infrastructure, such as pipelines, pump houses, generators, and other things that are necessary, or tanks, water storage tanks, other things necessary for the expansion of our domestic water system. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And finally, I'd like to say that staff recommends adoption of the resolution, which we're planning it to be effective October 1st, 2020.
Thank you. We have a council member who is out, so we're going to hold it for a minute. Mr. Clegg, do you wish to make any further comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I would only comment that we've paid close attention to creating nexus between those costs that we anticipate are, fair and accurate for providing the services and the infrastructure, and would recommend approval of the resolution.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Let me see your hands. Seeing none, anyone who wishes to speak in support or favor staff's recommendation? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Motion for staff recommendation.
You have a motion. Madam Clerk, roll, please.
Vice Mayor Parlier?
Aye.
Council members Rivera,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Weir,
Aye.
Smith,
Yes.
Freeman,
Aye.
and Sullivan.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
I'd like to add a correction, Mayor. The staff memorandum was filed and distributed regarding item C and not item A. Item C, public hearing to consider conditional use permit number 200170 appeal. The Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative is proposing a temporary conditional use permit for Project Room Key.
Mr. Clegg?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. We'll ask Paul Johnson to give us a quick introduction to this public hearing.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council members, Paul Johnson, Planning Director. If I get a moment here to get the slide up, thank you. So this agenda item is a conditional use permit that was approved by the Board of Zoning Adjustment and subsequently appealed by the Bakersfield Heart Hospital. The CUP, or conditional use permit, is a state program, otherwise known as Project Room Key. It would be operated locally by the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative. The mission statement of the Project Room Key is to provide temporary housing for persons experiencing homelessness who are deemed high risk of contracting COVID-19. The collaborative chose the Rosedale Inn site for this project. It is near Buck Owens Boulevard and 24th Street. Surrounding development includes some restaurants, some hotels, and the Bakersfield Heart Hospital. Rosedale Inn is comprised of 2 buildings, 100 rooms, As proposed, Project Room Key would use 21 of those rooms in the building and the side furthest away from the development. I'll let the collaborative discuss more on their project, but I just wanted to go back to the mission statement and give a quick definition of high risk. And again, the clients with this program are not COVID positive, but rather at high risk, and high risk is defined as individuals over age 65 or have a chronic health condition or individuals that are pregnant, and they must be able to ambulate and provide self-care. The Board of Zoning Adjustment considered this conditional use permit on August 11th. Based on the information available at that time, they approved the project for a period not to exceed 5 months. The day after the Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting, staff did receive a letter in opposition to the project from Sparks Law Firm, which was representing the Heart Hospital. This letter was dated August 10th, the day prior to the Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting, so therefore, at no fault to the law firm, it was not provided to the Board of Zoning Adjustment because it was not in receipt at the time. Staff reached out to the law firm and provided options, and one of those options being to appeal this project. The appeal was filed on August 14th in a timely manner, and I will let the appellant discuss their concerns with the project. There are 2 findings that must be made for conditional use permit approval. The first being that the project is deemed essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare, and the second, that the project is in harmony with the various elements and objectives of the general plan. If approved, conditional use permits are usually subject to conditions to ensure compliance with zoning regulations, compliance with elements and objectives of the general plan, compliance with policies of the city, and conditions are added to protect public health, safety, convenience, and welfare. Your council tonight basically has 3 options. You may uphold the appeal, in which case the conditional use permit would be denied. This would not prevent the applicant from applying for a new conditional use permit at a different location. You may deny the appeal, in which case the conditional use permit would be approved with conditions, and your council could have the same conditions that were imposed by the Board of Zoning Adjustment, or you can add, delete, or modify conditions as deemed necessary. Or if there are questions that can't be answered tonight, or if there's additional information that you need in order to make an informed decision, you may continue this hearing to a date specific. Based on the information in the admin report and the public testimony you hear tonight, staff is recommending that you render a decision based on one of these options. And this completes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Clegg, any further comments before I open?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. So at this time, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the project? That is, you are in favor of the appeal. Let me see how many people will want to speak during this time. Just if you can raise your hands. So total speaking in opposition to the project. 2? All right, very good. 3, okay. Go ahead and come forward. Is that Dr. Bombi? Please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Honorable Mayor, respected councilman, thank you very much for allowing us to participate in the conversation. My name is Subraj Bombi. I'm a cardiologist and chairman of the board of Bakersfield Heart Hospital. I'm also managing partner for Centric Health. I know several of you, and I just want to make a plea to you and share with you our concerns and our experiences at Bakersfield Heart Hospital so you have a better understanding, better due diligence in choosing the site. I have some prepared comments. Homelessness is a remediable scourge that needs attention and resources. Homelessness is a multivariate problem with well-documented prevalence of psychological dependency and financial psychiatric issues, and many other components. They're not so infrequent violent offshoots that need to be addressed while seeking to rehabilitate the vulnerable among us. Healthcare systems seek to address the infirmity and vulnerability in the community. Bakersfield Heart Hospital was founded on principles of service, compassion, and excellence in healthcare. Bakersfield Heart Hospital has lived up to the founding principles with honor, elevating cardiovascular care to world-class level. With a proven track record, Bakersfield Heart Hospital has the best record in the world in treating stroke patients with blockages in carotid arteries. At Bakersfield Heart Hospital, we pioneered multiple groundbreaking and life-saving treatments for the people in Kern County. More recently, at Bakersfield Heart Hospital, we have established the best record, and please pay attention, the best record this side of Mississippi in structural heart disease. Mighty claims, factually supported. Bakersfield Heart Hospital mission is to bring best care to our community. It can be endangered by unrecognized consequences of well-intentioned efforts. Over the years, Bakersfield Heart Hospital has been exposed to occasional shooting, periodic violence, and persistent vandalism. We applaud our law enforcement agencies in their prompt attention to flare-ups. Vandalism, however, persists on a regular basis with broken cars and stolen properties. Law enforcement is stressed. We need to be partners in mitigating the root cause of pervasive vandalism on the Bakersfield Heart Hospital campus. Employee safety is indispensable. It's indispensable to the quality of employee dedication. Patient safety rests on that. It is a sacred bond that can't be threatened, even unknowingly. We are scared about the safety of our patients and employees. We can't have a piecemeal approach, solve one problem and aggravate another. Our staff, nurses, techs, and doctors are all concerned. It's not about politics or aesthetics. It's a simple matter of workplace safety. It's a simple matter of workplace safety. We can't look away. Let's not allow the known destination of violence and vandalism to be financially rewarded and sustained to the detriment of patient care. As Louis Gill, the executive director of the Bakersfield Homeless Center, eloquently put it in a recent article in the Californian, and I quote him, "Those of us in crisis service are really good at a pivot because people need to be helped and community needs to be safe. We will find a solution." I suggest pivot is necessary. Part of the world that I practice in is based on Hippocratic Oath, and Hippocratic Oath says, first do no harm. Safer and more constructive solutions to the homeless problem are surely within the resourcefulness of the city of Bakersfield. On behalf of our patients and employees, we respectfully plead to the city to uphold their safety. Otherwise, vandalism will worsen and patient care will suffer. I respectfully submit this, along with 250 signatures from the Bakersfield Heart Hospital and the surrounding medical office building, doctors, patients, and employees, for the perusal of the mayor and the councilman. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Bombi. Next speaker.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is this his phone? Is this your phone?
Welcome. Please introduce yourself. You might want to raise the mic a little.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor, honorable council members. Jerry Sparks on behalf of the appellant. The opposition of the hospital, which Dr. Bombi very eloquently articulated, has been outlined in further detail in the August 14, 2020 letter, which I know the council has available to it. The appeal meets the requirements of Municipal Code Section 17.64.090, and we believe should be granted for several reasons. First of all, as Dr. Bombi pointed out, the hospital does recognize that homelessness is a problem which needs to be addressed, as does the risk of the spread of COVID among the homeless population and others. While the hospital is not opposed to a program which is designed to aid the homeless population and which carefully selects an appropriate venue to do so, it is opposed to the proposed CUP because of the location of the project and the detrimental impact on the health and safety of not only the homeless population it purports to be helping, but also to patients, their families, and the employees of the hospital. And let me explain. The Rosedale Inn, which is the proposed site of this project, is simply not a suitable location. The Rosedale Inn is a drop-off site for parolees. It is frequented by drug addicts and others who engage in criminal conduct. Placing a homeless population who is already vulnerable to addiction and other ailments at the Rosedale Inn is only going to expose them to further harm from the criminal element and drug addicts who already use the Rosedale Inn as a base for their criminal conduct. Another significant problem of the proposed program is the lack of adequate security to ensure that the participants of the program are confined and shelter in place at the Rosedale Inn. Although the administrative report that has been submitted to the City Council suggests that participants are, quote, limited to leaving the hotel for essential reasons only, close quote, Section 3 of the Operations Manual, which is also part of the administrative record in this case, specifically states that participants are, quote, welcome to take walks off property and to do so independently. In other words, without a monitor or any other supervision. The site monitors for the project are not suitable substitutes for security. They have no authority to restrain or restrict the movements of the participants, and they are not authorized or capable of doing anything to really protect the participants or the public. No provision has been made for 24-hour security by appropriately trained personnel with appropriate equipment to ensure that those who are sheltered as part of the project remain on the premises. There are simply far safer and more constructive solutions to the problems Project Roomkey is intended to resolve. And the goals of the project can be achieved, but only by doing so at a more suitable location which will not jeopardize the participants, unnecessarily tax the resources of the hospital, and put in jeopardy the employees, patients, and the families who are served by the hospital. Although the hospital applauds the efforts of Bakersfield-Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative and its goal of assisting this at-risk population, the simple truth is the Rosedale Inn is not the suitable environment for those who are supposed to be participating in the program. And we firmly believe that the health and well-being of the participants will actually be jeopardized rather than assisted by this project. The proposed use is not essential or desirable to the public convenience and welfare, and in fact, for all the reasons we've stated, is contrary to it. So the hospital urges the City Council to uphold the appeal and deny the conditional use permit. And with that, I thank you all for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. And we have somebody else who wanted to speak. We have 5 minutes and 42 seconds left for this segment. Who was the other person who wanted to speak in opposition? Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Michelle Oxford, CEO of the Bakersfield Heart Hospital. Thank you for allowing us to be here. So we've had a lot of media attention in the last few days with Project Roomkey, and as both Mr. Sparks and Dr. Bombi have stated, we do support the Homeless Collaborative and the initiatives for homelessness. But just in the last 2 days, and I'm sharing, Dr. Bombi provided the list of signatures that were just collected today, but in the last 2 days, I've had several staff members stop me in the hallway and ask questions about this, and it is also with their safety. We do know when you get a lot of homeless people together in a location, it breeds more homeless people in that location where there's services provided. So our staff are very concerned. I had a staff member last week who had her car broken into, and today I passed her in the hallway and she said, I already feel like a victim and now I'm scared to come to work. there's a lot of things that we need to discuss as a community with homelessness, and those issues are separate. But on behalf of the employees who feel violated and feel like this is just steps away, we have homeless people in our parking lot and within our hospital pretty much on a daily, weekly basis. And it's a constant issue for our security. One of our security guards last month was in an altercation and had to go to the emergency room because of a homeless person. So I just think it's a great initiative, but not steps away from a hospital.
Thank you, Ms. Oxford. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to the project? Seeing none. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the project? 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, go ahead and come forward. And let's make sure, Madam Clerk, that we reset the clock, please. Welcome, and please introduce yourself again.
Hi, folks. Stella Anna Lavin, Executive Director of the Bakersfield Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative. Council members, I want to thank you for your consideration and taking the time to hear about this amazing project. It's one that we have worked extensively on for any number of months. And Deb Johnson and I wear several hats here, and we're co-chairs of this project as well. So I want to speak on behalf of Deb, who's the co-chair. She'll be speaking a little bit later, as well as essentially all of our major homeless providing services. All of those folks are on board with this project and in fact have a role that they are playing in this project. But before I want to talk a little bit about and really focus a little bit on the myths that are being described in the appellant's opposition, I want to tell you a little bit about one of the potential program participants. And for confidentiality purposes, I'm going to call him Joe. That's not his real name. Joe is a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran. He has had multiple hospital admissions due to heart and breathing issues, and he is considered to be very medically vulnerable. Like most living on the streets, Joe has had consistent exposure to the elements, which has exacerbated many of his medical conditions and his poor health. He gets around in a wheelchair. He spends a lot of time with his grandchildren who live locally. He is liked by both his friends and his peers. He has an independent spirit, and he doesn't let his medical issues slow him down. Joe is one of a total of 226 individuals who are identified by us through our homeless management information system, who are 65 and older or have chronic medical conditions that make it especially concerning for them that they might be susceptible to COVID or die from COVID. There is one thing that sets Joe apart, and it's not that Joe's a veteran, and it's not that Joe is in a wheelchair. What sets Joe apart is that Joe died from COVID in July, which he contracted while living on the streets. At the time of his death, Joe had been matched to a housing voucher. We all bear responsibility for Joe's death. Had we stood this project up earlier, it is possible that Joe would still be with us, and Joe's grandchildren would still benefit from having their grandfather, as imperfect as he may be, in their lives. This project is about life or death, and I can think of no more essential public purpose than ensuring the life of your citizens and your residents. We know at least 2 people on our list have died. Joe is one of them. There are more Joes out there whose lives could be saved. Let us do the work to save them. And if saving lives isn't persuasive enough, and you feel like that doesn't meet the essential, desirable piece the general plan piece, let's focus on our economy here. We need to be realistic and understand that we are currently in Tier 1. At one point, we were able to reopen, infection rate soared, hospitalization soared. All of us were watching in the news. How many ventilators are left? Who's going to take them? Will there be one left for one of my folks that I know in my family? And we anticipate that it's entirely possible that in the fall, we will return to that scenario. So we're in Tier 1. That closure is hurting everyone. And the only thing that gets us out of Tier 1 is reducing our infection rate. The purpose of Project Room Key here in Kern County is to do just that with our homeless. If we send those 200 individuals to a shelter, it's entirely possible that we could result in the exact scenario that we fear most, something like a Kingston, where you had dozens of deaths. This isn't what we want. We wouldn't be standing up this project except for COVID conditions. I'm going to let Deb Johnson come forward and talk a little bit more about the project and how amazing it is, how it includes best practices, and why we're ensuring the safety and health of not only those who experience homelessness, but our neighbors.
Thank you, Ms. Levin. Welcome, and go ahead and state your name for the record.
Thank you. Deborah Johnson. I'm the President and CEO of the California Veterans Assistance Foundation, the governing board chair of the Homeless Collaborative, the identified service provider organization for Kern Project Room Key. And lastly, I'm here to advocate for over 200 unsheltered homeless individuals that are high risk of dying if contracting COVID, who do not have a voice or a signature to be here tonight. I'm here to address the following: our response to the appeal by the Bakersfield Heart Hospital and why Kern Project Room Key makes sense for our community. We all want safe, clean streets, parks, and public spaces, and we want businesses to be free from vandalism and nuisance attributed to unsheltered homeless persons. I myself have been a victim of having somebody break into my own car and have stuff stolen out of it at a local restaurant. But at the same time, as our city council, you are acutely aware that citing any project intended to serve persons experiencing homelessness is impossible to satisfy every expectation of every stakeholder in this project. We want to emphasize that Kern Project Room Key is a short-term COVID-19 prevention project designed to serve unsheltered homeless persons who meet certain eligibility criteria and provide a safe environment for them to shelter in place and self-isolate. We will not serve unsheltered homeless individuals in need of facilities to quarantine due to a known or suspected exposure. So as we were looking through the appeal, we identified 5 different areas we wanted to address. The first is that the concern that the project will jeopardize the health and well-being of those participating in the program due to illicit activity it alleges occurs at the Rosedale Inn. We appreciate the stated concerns for health and well-being of our neighbors experiencing homelessness. All participants of this project will be assigned a housing navigator, a behavioral health, and a primary health care team. This approach is guided by best practices and evidence-based strategies for serving persons experiencing homelessness. Number 2, the project would significantly add to the serious problems which already emanate from the Rosedale Inn, such as illicit drug use, vagrancy, theft, and vandalism of cars parked at the Bakersfield Heart Hospital, and increased exposure to patients and staff. As a condition for participating in Kern Project Room Key, individuals agree to self-isolate in their assigned motel room except for essential services. We do understand that our operations language maybe need to be modified, but that's what we're here to do. We're here to pivot. We're here to pivot as we stand up projects and look at our populations and how to serve them best. Participants who do not adhere to these conditions, including the agreement to self-isolate, will not be permitted to remain in Kern Project Room Key. We will ensure that they are transported safely off-site. It is also likely that this project, in fact, could displace some of the individuals responsible for problems identified by the Bakersfield Heart Hospital. I've driven around that property. I know that the condition that it is in today, there's a lot of trash, there's a lot of garbage in that area. Having our project with 24-hour staffing will help the condition of that facility and the participants of our program and hopefully the rest of the community in that area. Number 3, there is a concern that there will not be 24-hour security at the project, and the project and its staff has no authority whatsoever to detain or otherwise restrain those who are supposed to remain solely at the Rosedale Inn. The purpose of the project is to voluntarily self-isolate. Detaining or otherwise restraining individuals against their free will is incarceration. Homelessness is not a crime. The individuals we are trying to serve has not committed a crime, nor should they be restrained or detained if they want to walk off the property. Our goal is to ensure the safety of the participants, the motel guests, and all of the other organizations, agencies, and individuals in that community. But we will not treat them like criminals. Number 4, Kern Project Room Key will tax limited resources by presenting its emergency department with non-emergency conditions. As stated earlier, each person will be assigned a housing navigator, and we have commitments from Clinica Sierra Vista, Good Samaritan, and Kern Behavioral Health to provide on-site care, assessments, and crisis intervention. We want to ensure that this makes sense for our community. And trying to get this project developed and approved has been emotionally brutal for the members of our staff and our committee that's tried to stand up this project and have had to bear a lot of public scrutiny. The public has made horrific judgments and statements about the people and situations that they only hear about in the news or through social media. I'm hoping that as elected officials, we have our opportunity to explain why this project, in a nutshell, makes good sense. The project is based on best practices, both within the state of California and nationwide. Across the country, other localities and leaders have taken urgent, historic action to move people from streets into motels. This has been done by connecting people on the streets with safe accommodations, move them into permanent housing, and ultimately prevent a new wave of homelessness. Kern Project Room Key provides 24-hour site presence, which is not done in any other project in the state of California. Including in that site presence will again be on-site medical, mental health, and crisis intervention. This will also allow the Bakersfield-Kern Regional Homeless Collaborative an opportunity to address homelessness as identified in that community. We will be boots on the ground. We'll have an opportunity to directly assess individuals that are experiencing homelessness and get them connected to services. This will also allow us an opportunity to give back to the neighborhood by cleaning up that property at the motel and the surrounding area. You have my commitment. We will make that happen. And last but not least, we're not asking for money. We have funding set aside designated for the a COVID response project. In closing, I'm taking this quote from Community Solutions Built for Zero initiative. Homelessness has always been a matter of life and death for the people experiencing it. COVID-19 has underscored that this is a public health crisis for us all.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We have about a minute and a half left for anybody who wishes to speak in favor, and I saw 2 requests to speak, so if you'd like to split that time. Mr. Walker, I think, was approaching, and then... Go ahead. Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. Bill Walker, Kern Behavioral Health and Recovery Services. Honorable Mayor, members, the clock is literally ticking down. I want to first just say thank you to the Heart Hospital. I have 2 very dear friends that probably wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for their emergency services, so I want to honor their services. I just want to say, as the behavioral health entity in this, we treat over 15,000 people at any given time across this entire county. Because of our network adequacy, we have to be across the entire county. Our psychiatric center at Mary Kay Shell, right next to East High School, treats over 1,000 people a month without incident. And we've lost some of our facilities in meetings like this because people are concerned. I just want to support this project and allow the last seconds for the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Bill.
Just let's do 1 minute for cleaning.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Margarita Rosen. I'm the project director for Clinica Sierra Vista Homeless Program. And I just feel that we're doing a lot of stigma on what is happening and criminalizing the homeless. We are here to support them. We go and do street homeless outreach. Dr. Berry has gone out and done services to the homeless. I have been there for 8 years. I've seen the progress and the support that these individuals need, and I've seen them progress and be a positive person to the community. I have hired 2 previously homeless individuals. It's amazing. We need to provide support to the community.
Thank you, Ms. Rosa. And now there is an opportunity for rebuttal. So is there anybody who wishes to rebut? We have 5 minutes, so this would be in opposition to the project. Dr. Bombi?
Honorable Mayor, respected Councilman, so we have no argument. Everything the preceding speaker said is right out of our textbook. We have no argument with the project. The 70-year-old Joe who martyred his life to COVID is the 70-year-old Joes we protect in our hospital all day long. Saving life is very persuasive. That's why I elected to be a physician. That's why I built the Heart Hospital. The mission of Heart Hospital, however, cannot be jeopardized. I see the kindness and compassion in all the speakers who preceded me. And again, I reiterate that we don't have any argument with that. Our argument is the COVID pandemic has also generated a parallel pandemic of fear. People are afraid to seek help. So there has been a substantial amount of death over and above what COVID would have done from patients who had preventable reasons like heart attacks and strokes. So we don't want to dissuade people from seeking health care who are afraid of consequences of coming to the Heart Hospital. We can't have our employees be scared of working at the Heart Hospital and further having attrition in the resources that need to be devoted toward the healthcare in the hospital. So the merits of the projects are there. Our ask is the solution be comprehensive and not piecemeal. While we try to take care of some segment of the society, we shouldn't displace the society who's already being well taken care of. I suggest we take that argument into consideration. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bombi. Anyone else who wishes? Mr. Sparks? Go ahead and raise the mic if you would. Thank you. And say your name for the record, please.
Jerry Sparks on behalf of Bakersfield Heart Hospital and Appellant. Nobody is suggesting that the homeless are criminals, that they should be incarcerated, that they should receive negative treatment. In fact, the position of the appellant is the contrary. The problem is that the site that has been selected for this project is inappropriate. It's not going to help, it's going to hurt. There is an element there that is adverse to the community as it exists today, and it is even more dangerous to the participants of this program to be placed in an environment where there are drug users. One can go out there and you can see them. I've seen them myself. There are parolees and criminals who are dropped off at that location. It is not an appropriate environment. Yes, we applaud the efforts to help. We just strenuously believe that this location is the wrong choice and the wrong environment. You look at the budget, $0 for security. It's only monitors who can't do anything to help protect the participants or the public. So we again invite you to please uphold the appeal and deny the CUP as to this location and find a more suitable place for this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. We have about a minute and a half left. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in opposition to the project? Dr. Bombi, are you coming back?
I feel compelled to reiterate. I feel the tug in the arguments that were made. Last night, I didn't sleep a wink. All day today, I went through about 15 patients who needed different kind of interventions. There was restless in my body, in my mind, that how can I jeopardize the people who provide care to the community who have a stellar record in the last 20 years, be somehow scared, intimidated, and not be encouraged to come to work. So there is no conflict in the message here. There's a convergence, there is synergy. The problem is how to do it right. Doing it at the doorsteps of the Heart Hospital serves nobody well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bobby. Anyone else in the last 48 seconds? Seeing none, is there anyone who'd like to rebut in favor of the project? Come forward and we'll reset the clock, please. Go ahead, state your name for the record, please.
Sure. I continue to be Anna Lavin. So let me turn around and ask everyone who's associated with this project to stand. Thank you. The people that you see standing, and there are many more, I can assure you, who are watching and who were not unfortunately able to attend because we knew space was limited. We have literally every single homeless provider, servicer, participating in this project. It is their expertise and many hundreds of years of that expertise combined that led us to understand that this particular location would likely be a good fit for this project. When you look at it, on 3 sides, this project has no neighbors. You have a canal, you have the Rosedale Highway, and you have Buck Owens Boulevard. It allows for far better site selection and site control than many other locations. And I can share with you that Deb and I, in the last few months, have explored any number of motels. It's an appropriate location. I believe that our homeless providers would share with us if they had concerns. And I think that you heard from Deb that we have put in every piece, every service that we can possibly think of to ensure that these folks do no harm to the neighbors across the way. The other thing that I think I really need to hit home here is for the Heart Hospital, I'm very sorry that they are experiencing the conditions that they're experiencing. But I'm highly pragmatic. If we do nothing, their problems continue. Literally nothing happens other than the status quo. All of the fear that they describe their employees experiencing continues. This doesn't solve anything. The status quo does nothing other than to continue the very problems they described they want to avoid. What's perplexing to me is that we're talking about 20 rooms at a time. That's 20 people. That's the equivalent of the size of a kindergarten class. If we can have sufficient control over kindergartners, I expect that if every single homeless provider is supporting service to this project with a relatively low staff to participant ratio, we should certainly be able to control 20 65 and older folks. The reality is this: if the conditional use permit does not go through, we'll have to spend another 3 months potentially looking for another location and engaging in the process yet again. It's too late. The urgency is there. We've already looked through a number of locations. If this doesn't happen, then we're done. And if anyone dies or anybody happens to hit a hospital, then that's all on us. We are obligated, and we can certainly feel guilty about it if it doesn't go through. The flip side is, recall that I described Joe to you when I first came to speak. The flip side is, we have the potential to take action, we have the potential to save lives, and frankly, we have strong potential to reverse the course of the neighborhood and ensure for increased safety and health of folks.
Thank you, Ms. Lavin. We have about a minute left. Welcome. Please state your name for the record.
Deborah Johnson. I just wanted to highlight an area that was brought up before, and that was the security piece. Based on the previous conversation, the Zoom call that we had with members of the community, Ann and I went back to the drawing board. We pivoted. We looked at our budget and how we could provide additional security to that project. So our previous idea was to do site monitors, but we have now changed that methodology to include housing navigator for a portion of the day, site monitors, and then hire professional security from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning. And they would provide 24-hour coverage on the weekend. So we have listened to the community, we have listened to the Bakersfield Heart Hospital, and we feel we can pivot on the security piece and be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Typically at this time, I would close the public hearing, but there's an option for continuance. I just want to check with my colleagues that there is no one who is interested in continuing this. So I see head shakes. So at this point, I will close the public hearing, and I'm going to call for a 5-minute break just so we can have a quick break before we come back for council action and council comments and action. So let's take a quick break right now. And we'll make it about 7 minutes to give people enough time. Councilmember Smith, are you on the phone? Can you just check in, please?
I'm here.
All right, very good. Well, we are reconvening, and now
Having a drink.
right. You're being broadcast, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Weir.
Thank you. This is in my ward, and we have a decision to make tonight. So I will tell you that I have spent an unusual amount of time in the last year in that area. More time than I ever wanted to spend there. And over the year, it is clear that there is an overabundance of people, homeless, whatever you want to call it, wandering around in the area around where we're speaking.
It is inundated. And what is happening in that area is truly very sad. It's very sad. Lately, I've been driving in that area at nighttime to see what's going on at nighttime. I don't unlock my car. I don't, and I won't, because it can be pretty scary around there at nighttime. And the Rosedale Inn is dark. It is not well lit. It is undesirable. I would say at least undesirable to want to live there. I understand your program. I mean, you've done an excellent job evaluating your program and explaining it to me. I don't have any questions of your program. I think your program could be very successful. But I don't think it can be here. You are bringing in homeless population into an area where they will be monitored. Well, I don't know exactly what that means, but they have freedom to get out and wander around and talk. And I personally would hate it if I was going to go to one of those rooms and have to be locked in my room and couldn't go outside. I couldn't experience life anymore. I mean, what we're going through right now is bad enough. And I don't buy the premise that in sheltering these people in a room for 14 days to 90 days, however long it's going to be, will save their life, because there's a lot more to it than that. They're going to leave that program, they're going to exit, they're going to go into their own living, they're going to have interactions all along the way, and at any time, they could catch the COVID. I mean, it's a nasty disease. It's not going away anytime soon. And so what I see is that we are moving homeless people into an area that's inundated with homeless and criminal activities, drug addicts, parolees, undesirable area. And right across from them, and I've seen this whole year, there's a medical campus that attracts, I'm guessing, 400 to 500 people every day that is already suffering from illness. They're already sick. And so now if you take your population and they're out just for their walk and they happen to meet one of these people and they become sick, it sounds like it doesn't work. You don't want to put susceptible people near a population of sick people, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. I applaud your efforts in this program. I really do. I think your heart's in the right place, and I wish you great success. But my motion is to uphold the appeal, and I think that's the right decision. And I'm hoping that you can put together a program in another location at some point in time where it does make a lot more sense. So that's my motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to first thank all of the folks who are working day in and day out on the front lines addressing homelessness. They have a task that we have all asked them to do, and they're looking for solutions. They're trying to find any pathway to bring more people out of homelessness and into housing. And this is just one more of those, one more solution in the toolkit of various different strategies. And I think it's important for someone to make the comment that we really need to destigmatize homelessness. And I think the best way to do that is to really get in our heads that there are various different routes to homelessness. There are various different subsets of populations and people. So we kind of have to disaggregate the population of homeless individuals. What I mean by that is, for this particular project, the goal is to address those people who are who are chronically ill, who are 65 and older. That's the population that this project is aiming to serve. And so, you know, in future endeavors, I think it's really incumbent upon all of us, city staff, city leaders, homeless providers, to really work with neighbors and surrounding partners to communicate what exactly we're doing. So push past the broad label of homeless individuals and really drill down into what particular population of people we're aiming for. I think that will help in future projects. But for this project, I have to agree with my colleague, Councilmember Weir, in that, you know, the Rosedale Inn is just adjacent to my ward, and so I pass by the facility fairly regularly and in all times of the day. And I'm very concerned about that particular site with regard to some of the elements that exist there. Not necessarily homeless individuals, but just other elements that exist that I've observed myself, and having conversations with other property owners they have observed as well. And so tonight, along with the motion, I'd like to make a referral to staff to identify alternatives for this project. And one alternative is that temporary isolation unit at the fairgrounds that was mentioned earlier. It's my understanding that there was only 1 week that facility was actually in full capacity, and that throughout all of September, there's only been 1 or 2 people using that site. Mr. Clegg, can you confirm that and help me understand how many units are available at that site total?
Councilmember Gonzalez and Mayor and Council, there are 15 trailers at the Fairgrounds Isolation Unit. We can go back and verify the numbers, but I can confirm that there was essentially about a 1-week period where we were at maximum capacity in July. Outside of that time frame, there has been capacity at that site. I think it's important to note that it wouldn't be the full number of beds being, you know, suggested by this project.
Sure.
But that there has been capacity at the trailers.
And certainly for those who are experiencing COVID, that site is available for them today.
Correct.
Okay, and then the second piece of that referral is regarding the Brundage Lane Navigation Center. I mean, we've just acquired this property with lots of space. I'd like staff to look at a possibility of creating some space that might be available for people in this vulnerable population to isolate. Maybe it's 5, 10 beds, but allow that possibility within that site. And I know there's been a lot of work to get the site up and running by the end of next month, but I think it's worthwhile that we look at that, considering the need that has been identified. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Freeman, did you change your mind?
Councilman Gonzalez stole my thunder. I was going to say exactly the same thing, that we just spent $5 million plus on a center on Brundage Lanes. It's supposed to be open in a month. It could hold, I mean, when we really looked at it, probably could hold 450 people eventually. We were going to start with 150. We say we have 209 highly vulnerable people who do not have COVID, but who are the most vulnerable. I think we should look at opening it up to dedicating to these people initially the entire place. If they are the most vulnerable of the homeless population and they don't have COVID, then we should at least say, consider the services are there, the security's there, everything is there. Maybe they're given priority in the first wave of occupancies there. But at least I'd like that, as Councilman Gonzalez said, let's study alternatives, and so let's at least take a look at moving as many of these people as we could into the Brundage Center.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Mr. Clegg.
Yeah, thank you. Council members and Mayor, those are good suggestions. And thankfully, we have great staff that have taken some of those considerations already. And COVID has been a big challenge, but where we can take advantage of the opportunity to make adjustments because of where we're at, we've done that. And so in the design for the navigation center, there is an isolation unit that has been designed there. We'll have to look at, you know, the numbers for that isolation unit and how that compares to whether we would use the entire site as isolation or whether we have enough beds to do isolation as well as, you know, hosting new clients. But that's been part of the design, is to have an isolation unit at the new navigation center, and we can facilitate that.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. Are there any requests to speak? Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you. I have been sitting here trying to remember back what year it was that we approved the location and use for the Bakersfield Heart Hospital. I was one of the sitting members at that time, and I remember the controversy about that. From the other health facilities, there was concern, overlap of services and all of that. And now the Bakersfield Heart Hospital has been developed into one of the finest, reputation-wise, performance-wise. So we value what you do, and we value your reputation. And yes, they're having problems because of, you know, just because of the population problems that we're having. But you know, this is one of those issues that good people with strong positions on both sides. So we've heard, we're listening, we have compassion for the issues, the needs, and certainly the problems that we're involved with. Okay, it's been you know, Project Room Key. Yeah, what a great name. And just at the very beginning, I have been making notes as the different speakers have been making their points. One of the very first points was amazing project. An amazing project. It is. A lot of good people are involved, and certainly a need. What a great concept. And I think we've all been getting calls in favor of you know, upholding in favor of the location, and then not in favor. And also, I've been getting I've got several calls from the Crystal Palace and the radio stations. And I was also on the council when we approved the name of Buck Owens Boulevard. You know, that we all take pride in that. We love, you know, we have a big sign on the freeway, Buck Owens Boulevard. Wow, that's known all over the country, all over the world. So that is something that belongs to all of us, and we need, you know, there are some great ideas that are planned in the future for that area there. And someone's going to be around and on making in this decision-making role, and they're going to, Buck Owens Boulevard is going to mean a lot to them, and they're going to, I know, going to be very open to all good things that are possible and being proposed for that area. So, you know, I'm listening. I don't want to do anything to cause more of a problem for our amazing Bakersfield Heart Hospital or the businesses that are proud to be, able to be, and proud to be on Buck Owens Boulevard. So this is an amazing project. But it was also mentioned, this is a good location over the other locations. And of course, we know there are other locations. We appreciate the fact that, you know, we have the city of Bakersfield. We certainly very strongly value, are open to solutions for our homeless population. And we have the fairgrounds, you know, that we're aware of that. And they mentioned 20 rooms. So that's not a large number. And believe me, I know our staff is going to go to work and come up with some other possibilities for this amazing project. But the whole issue, nothing wrong with the project, but the whole issue is location. And even though we'd love to be able to say, me personally, to be able to say yes, and I am saying yes to the project, but I cannot say yes to the location. And so, you know, I'm going to be upholding the appeal, and because of the location. And there will be other locations. We'll come up with something. We'll go out of our way to come up with something very quickly. You know, it's hard to find not only a suitable, but a willing location for a project like this. So we've already done that for many of our, you know, we do have several of the homeless projects for the locations that we've already worked hard to have approved, and we're making them work, and we're going to be, and they're large areas. So there are other locations that are doable. But I definitely am willing to agree and agreeing that this is not the only location possible for this amazing project, and but it's already, the area is already amazing for what's already there. And so I'm going to do all I'm supporting protecting that location, not doing anything to make it any more difficult for what's already there, which we take pride in, which is important to our area. And so I am not approving this location that's being asked for tonight, and the words are going to be said by others, but I will be upholding the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan, and now Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. So, you know, my apologies to the group of folks who put a lot of time and energy into this. It seems to me, for whatever reason, the way we decide to proceed with anything homeless seems to get convoluted one way or the other, and we have false starts, and we have expended energy, but I don't think it ever really ends up being wasted energy. I think it ends up moving the needle just a little bit in the right direction, whether you like it or not. So, you know, I'm willing to support Councilmember Weir's position on this, given it's in his district. I think there are a few things I heard that I want to just clarify for the record, and one was the notion that staff and maybe the collaborative go back and seek out a new location, and I'm not entirely sure that's time well spent. Given you've also heard from other council members that maybe there's and you're hearing from staff that there's maybe capacity at the fairgrounds or at the Brundage Lane Navigation Center, I think that's probably where time and energy is best spent. But I would like to say, in response to Councilmember Gonzalez's referral, you know, there's obviously no bigger critic of the Brundage Lane Navigation Center than yours truly. And I'll remind folks that over 1,000 people submitted signatures to this very same body a few months ago requesting that location not be purchased for the purpose of a navigation center, and the majority of this body decided to do it anyway. But that's okay, that's done now, and I'm fine with that. But I want to make sure we stick to what we told the community back then, and what we told the community back then was that this was a 150-bed facility. I just heard Councilmember Freeman say 450 beds. I may not be here for much longer, but if we get to January 1 and if I hear that there are 450 beds at that facility, I'm going to start busing people over to Councilmember Freeman's district, because that is not what we talked about. That is not what the community was told. That is, my understanding, not part of the good neighbor policies, and I'd have a serious issue with that. So I think what I'm hearing Councilmember Gonzalez and what I think the council's in support of is working within the existing framework at Brundage Lane to see whether or not there's an ability to accommodate and address this need as well. And if that's the case, then I'm 100% behind it. But if we're moving in another direction, then I'm going to filibuster and keep us here all night because that is not what we decided a few months ago. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry. City Manager Clegg and then Councilmember Smith. Thank you, Councilmember Rivera.
Yeah, Councilmember Rivera, through the chair and to the council, I'll speak to the more immediate issue of the referral, as I understood it, was about finding alternatives. I didn't hear in that it was necessarily about specifically alternative sites, but just alternatives that may be available to us. And so I appreciate the commentary and the direction about seeking alternatives within our opportunities or resources that are already available to us. But yeah, when I heard alternatives, I thought it was open-ended, not a one specific alternative.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. 2 points that I think made my decision were the idea that this Rosedale Inn is not the best site for the vulnerable people that we want to put there. It is a rough place and they could easily be taken advantage of. So I don't believe it's the best place for them. And also I do think the Brundage Lane Navigation Center is a good opportunity. And if we're talking about, 65-year-old plus homeless people, I think that fits in with the community, and plus it's someplace where the services are there and the security's there, and 20 out of the 150 beds should be able to work. And I heard Mr. Clegg say something about an isolation room. I mean, these people do not have COVID, my understanding. They are just have chronic illnesses, so they would not have to be isolated. Is that true, Mr. Clegg?
Thank you, Councilmember Smith, and through the chair. It is my understanding of this project that these are at-risk individuals that are not diagnosed. The trailers at the fairground site are more targeted towards individuals that are recovering, that have been treated for COVID or isolated specifically for COVID. And so the Project Room Key intent was to be able to house individuals at higher risk categories, correct?
Thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Smith.
That's my thoughts. I just wanted to reinforce that I think the timing is such that the Brundage Lane Center is not very far off from the timing of this project. That makes more sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Are there any other requests to speak? Seeing none, we have a motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Parlier?
Aye.
Council members Rivera?
Aye.
Gonzalez?
Aye.
Weir?
Aye.
Smith?
Yes.
Freeman?
Aye.
And Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Next, we have council and mayor statements.
Thank you. Colleagues? Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you. Mayor, real quick, I wanted to make a referral to staff. I had some conversations with our planning staff, and we are in need of a reasonable accommodation ordinance to get us into compliance with state law and affordable housing requirements, and it's a good time to do it since we're updating our general plan. So I want to make a referral to planning and development that they consider a reasonable accommodation ordinance, have staff prepare that for their consideration. And I know we have a meeting on September 22nd that's probably a little tight. If we can make it, this might be a rather quick item to go through. If we can't, then I ask that they get it scheduled for the next meeting after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rivera. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Two referrals. First one to Safe Neighborhoods. We've had almost 30 people killed, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists here, which is extremely high numbers, highest I think I've experienced since I've been on the council. Police motorcycles is one of those tools that can possibly help stem some of these fatalities because they're just capable of doing things that regular cars aren't able to do. So I'd like an update on our motorcycle unit, building that up, our status, when we're going to get the full strength. Last one, so we have a fee for restaurants for outside seating, excuse me, and it's about $80-some. I've received some comments from some restaurants that are really struggling, and they say, it's a minimal fee. They agree with that. But if you're not making any money hardly at all now, $80-some is 6 meals that they have to produce essentially free before they even recoup that fee back. So if there's an opportunity to waive that fee, potentially backfill it with CARES money or something, so we can do every little bit we can to help those struggling businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. On the subject of downtown revitalization, I've been working with a prospective business owner who has been desiring to utilize a shipping container for a high-end boutique, but is unable to with the existing code. And so I'd like to make a referral tonight for staff to review that and to come back with a ordinance amendment that will allow for the use of metal storage containers for human habitation.
Thank you, Councilmember Gonzalez. Is there anyone else? Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to mention the State of the City that was held last Saturday night, 6 o'clock. I had a wedding that I needed and wanted to go to, and so I wasn't able to watch it at the time. But I hear it was wonderful. I want to commend, finally, you get introduced to the community. And the mayor, I understand, did a great job. I just hear it was very, very, very well done. So we've got to promote it. Channel 17, I guess, did the taping, the recording, and so we need to encourage them to advertise it and get it easy to find and easy to see, because I want to watch it. I plan to, and how nice now that we're going to be able to watch it more than once if we want to. But I just want to assure you that normally it's a sellout, not a seat left in the house. It's one of the finest, most sought after, enjoyed activities of the year. And I'm not surprised that it's great. What a shame it had to be online, virtual. That's just part of 2020, but next year hopefully we'll be back and you'll get a taste of how it always is usually. So anyway, and I looked on the city website, wasn't easily able to find it. So let's just really make it available and just promote it online on a city level, and because we all want to be able to enjoy it. And anyway, we did it. We weren't able to do it like we usually do, and we all lost out being able to be there in person. But it was taped, and so looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan. KGT is going to make that available. They are doing some refinement, and it will be available digitally online. Any other requests to speak? Seeing none, thank you everyone for your participation in this evening. And with that, we are adjourned at 7:57.